Introduction. There's a strange paradox sitting inside your alarm clock. The first 60 minutes after you wake up have almost nothing to do with your job, your relationships, or your bank account. And yet researchers who study well-being keep finding the same thing over and over again. Those 60 minutes quietly decide how the rest of your day is going to feel. Not what happens to you, how it feels. Two people can wake up on the same morning, live in the same city, walk into the same kind of stressful job, and end that day in completely different emotional places. Same events, different outcomes. And when psychologists go looking for the variable that explains the gap, they keep landing in the same place. The first hour after the eyes open. This isn't about waking up at 5 a.m. It isn't about cold plunges or extreme discipline or turning your morning into a military operation. Most of what actually moves the needle on happiness is smaller than that, quieter than that, and far more ordinary than the version of morning routine that gets sold online. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to walk through 10 habits that consistently show up in psychological and behavioral research on happiness and mood regulation, not as a rigid checklist, but as a set of levers. Some work on your body, some work on your brain chemistry, some work on your sense of control. And by the end, you'll understand not just what to do, but why it works, which is the part most morning routine content skips entirely. The body wakes up before the mind does. Before we talk about mindset, gratitude, or motivation, we need to talk about something far less glamorous, your body clock. Every human being runs on what scientists call a circadian rhythm, an internal, roughly 24-hour clock that governs when you feel alert, when you feel sleepy, and critically, how your hormones behave throughout the day. And the single strongest signal that resets this clock every single day isn't caffeine, it's light. When natural light, even on a cloudy day, hits your eyes in the first 30 to 60 minutes after waking, it does two things almost simultaneously. It suppresses melatonin, the hormone that makes you feel groggy, and it helps regulate the timing of cortisol, a hormone that in the right dose actually improves alertness and mood, not just stress. This is sometimes called the cortisol awakening response. And contrary to cortisol's reputation as the stress hormone, this particular morning spike is associated with feeling more energized and psychologically prepared for the day, not more anxious. Habit 1 then is simple. Get outside, or at least near a window, within the first hour of waking. You don't need direct sunlight staring into your eyes. You need exposure. 5, 10, 15 minutes is enough for most people. This single habit is one of the most well-supported interventions in sleep and mood research, partly because it doesn't just affect your morning. It also improves your sleep quality that night, which loops back around and improves your mood the next morning. It's a cycle that reinforces itself. Now here's the part almost no one talks about. What you do in the first 5 minutes after waking can completely undo the value of that sunlight. Habit 2 is about what you don't do, reaching for your phone the second your eyes open. Researchers who study attention have a useful term for this: context switching. The moment you open a notification, an email, or a social feed, your brain is forced to process someone else's priorities, someone else's emotional tone, before you've had a chance to set your own. You wake up calm and, within 90 seconds, you're reacting to a work message, a headline, or a stranger's opinion. Your nervous system doesn't get a say in the matter. It just absorbs whatever's on the screen and responds accordingly. This doesn't mean phones are evil. It means sequencing matters. The people who report feeling calmer and more in control of their mornings tend to share one trait. They simply delay the phone by even 15 or 20 minutes, that's it. Not a digital detox. Just a delay, enough time for your own mind to wake up before someone else's agenda does. Chemistry you can control. Your brain runs on chemistry, and two of the cheapest, most accessible chemical levers available to you happen before you've even left the bedroom. The first is water. After 6 to 8 hours without drinking anything, most people wake up in a mild state of dehydration. And dehydration, even mild dehydration, has been linked in research to reduced alertness and a worse mood. Habit 3 is rehydrating first thing. A full glass of water before coffee, before anything else. It's unglamorous, almost embarrassingly simple, but it's one of the few habits on this list with essentially zero downside and immediate physiological benefit. The second lever is movement, and this is where the research gets genuinely striking. Physical activity, and we're not talking about an hour-long gym session, triggers the release of endorphins and other neurochemicals associated with improved mood. But the mood benefit isn't reserved for intense exercise. Multiple studies on light to moderate movement, like a brisk 10-minute walk or a short set of stretches, show measurable improvements in self-reported mood and reductions in anxiety, sometimes within minutes. Habit 4 then is movement, even brief movement, early in the day. The mechanism is partly chemical, through endorphins and other neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, and partly psychological. Movement signals to your brain that you're capable, active, and in motion, which subtly shifts how you interpret everything else that happens afterward. There's a reason athletes and performers talk about getting the blood flowing before something important. It isn't superstition. It's neurochemistry doing exactly what it's designed to do. The The mind needs direction, not just energy. Here's something counterintuitive. A well-rested, sunlit, hydrated, moved body can still wake up into an anxious or unfocused mind. Physical habits set the stage, but they don't write the script. That's where the next set of habits comes in. And this is where psychology, rather than biology, takes the lead. One of the most replicated findings in positive psychology involves something almost embarrassingly simple: writing down a few things you're grateful for. Research by psychologists, including Robert Emmons, has repeatedly found that people who practice brief, regular gratitude exercises report higher well-being over time compared to those who don't. The effect isn't about pretending your problems don't exist. It's about redirecting attention. Your brain has a well-documented bias toward noticing threats and problems, a survival mechanism that made sense for most of human history, but which in modern life quietly tilts your perception toward the negative by default. Gratitude practice is essentially a counterweight. It's not toxic positivity, it's attentional training. Habit 5 is writing down 2 or 3 specific things you're grateful for, ideally before you check anything else. The word specific matters here. I'm grateful for my family is weaker, research suggests. Then, I'm grateful my sister called me back yesterday when I needed to talk. Specificity forces your brain to actually retrieve a real memory rather than recite a generic phrase. Closely related is habit 6, a few minutes of quiet, unstructured mental space. Some people call this meditation, others call it simply sitting in silence. Studies on mindfulness-based practices consistently associate even brief daily sessions with reduced symptoms of anxiety and improved emotional regulation. You don't need an app, a cushion, or 20 minutes. Even 3 to 5 minutes of intentional stillness, noticing your breath, letting thoughts pass without chasing them, appears to measurably lower the reactivity of the brain's stress response over time. Think of it less as relaxation and more as training. You're teaching your mind to notice a thought without immediately becoming that thought. The psychology of control. Now, we arrive at something that connects almost every habit on this list, and it's worth pausing on, because it's the underlying mechanism, not just another item to add to your list. Psychologists have long studied a concept called locus of control, essentially, whether you feel like the events of your life happen to you or because of you. And one of the most consistent findings in well-being research is that a higher internal locus of control, a stronger sense of "I am steering this," correlates strongly with higher life satisfaction. Mornings, it turns out, are a uniquely powerful place to build that sense of control, because they're often the only part of the day that hasn't yet been claimed by other people's demands. That's why habit 7, making your bed, shows up so often in happiness research and military psychology alike. It sounds trivial, almost too small to matter, but the value isn't in the bed. It's in completing one small, entirely self-directed task before the outside world starts making demands of you. It's a tiny, repeatable proof to yourself that you follow through on what you set out to do, and that feeling compounds. The same logic extends to habit 8, writing a short, realistic to-do list, ideally limited to your top 3 priorities rather than an overwhelming 20-item list. Research on goal setting shows that vague, sprawling intentions tend to produce anxiety, while short, specific, achievable goals tend to produce a sense of momentum. The psychological term researchers sometimes use is self-efficacy, your belief in your own ability to affect outcomes, and mornings are the cheapest, lowest-stakes place in your entire day to build it. You are not an island. There's a finding from decades of longitudinal happiness research, including some of the longest-running studies on human well-being ever conducted, that keeps surfacing no matter how the question is asked. The strength of a person's relationships is one of the single strongest predictors of long-term happiness. Not income, not career success, relationships. And yet most morning routines are built as if we live entirely alone. Habit 9 is a small act of genuine human connection early in the day. A real conversation over breakfast, a message to a friend that isn't just a work obligation, even brief eye contact and a real good morning to someone you live with. This isn't about performative socializing. It's about front-loading your day with a reminder that you are connected to other people before the isolating pull of screens, commutes, and inboxes takes over. There's also a quieter version of this, self-connection. Habit 10 is a brief moment of intentional reflection on your own values or purpose, even just asking yourself, what actually matters to me today? Research on purpose and meaning suggests that people who maintain a clear, even loosely defined sense of purpose tend to report higher well-being and greater resilience against daily stress. You don't need a life mission statement at 7 a.m. You need a 30-second check-in with yourself before the day starts making decisions for you. The myth worth retiring. Before we close, it's worth addressing a myth that quietly undermines a lot of this research. The idea that happiness comes from a perfect, complete morning routine, 10 habits done flawlessly every single day, or it doesn't count. That's not what the evidence supports. Studies on habit formation consistently show that consistency matters more than intensity, and that small, repeatable actions beat elaborate ones that are too demanding to sustain. Missing a day doesn't erase the pattern. Doing 3 of these 10 habits, most mornings, will move the needle further than attempting all 10 perfectly for a week, and then abandoning the whole thing out of exhaustion. The real finding underneath all of this research isn't do more. It's that happiness responds to small, repeated signals: light, movement, gratitude, control, connection, stacked gently on top of each other, morning after morning, until they become less like a routine and more like identity. Closing none of these 10 habits on their own will transform your life overnight. That was never the claim. But research on well-being keeps pointing to the same quiet truth. Happiness isn't one big decision. It's the accumulation of small ones repeated daily, starting with the very first hour you're awake. You don't need all 10 tomorrow morning. Pick one, let it become automatic, then add another. If you found this useful, consider subscribing. There's more research-backed content like this on the way.